Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek. Happy New Year. Happy Christmas to you as well. If you celebrate that, it's fantastic to be back. I hope you had a fantastic break. I know I did. I'm feeling rested and rejuvenated and really looking forward to 2020. We're here whole load of exciting TV programs came out over the break as well as obviously The Witcher came out, which was massive. We had the ending to his Dark Materials happened. Doctor Who started. Dracula has just started over on BBC in this country. I think is going to be on Netflix quite soon as well. The Mandalorian, which I haven't had a chance to see yet, also come out. There's been so many good things coming out. So very happy to talk about them. The things I've seen anyway, obviously, as well as A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. Looking forward to The Winds of Winter. Fingers crossed for this year, but don't hold your breath. And as is always the case with these kind of open Q&A, then we're going to dot around quite a lot on this. I've got a whole load of questions, as always, from my patrons. I try to prioritize my questions from patrons, but obviously I will try and drop in as many questions as I can from the chat as we're going through as well. So let's just kick off. We had a couple of super chats before we went live. I just want to say thank you very much for them. We've got Michaela S. just saying Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Thank you so much. That's very kind. Didelphi Morphia, thank you. That's very kind. So the super chat saying big hopes for the Traveler's Guide this year, 2020. Yeah, I will talk a little bit more later on about my plans for 2020, all the things I've got going on, because I've got spent a lot of the last couple of weeks or so having a think about where to go with this channel, all the different new things that I could be doing, as well as carrying on with this content. The Traveler's Guide, definitely carrying on with that. I've probably got 8, 9, maybe 10 more episodes working through Essos to go. Really excited about that. And we're back up and running tomorrow, in fact. So we're at Marine next time, and there's going to be 2 based in Marine this week and next week. So that's something that I've really enjoyed researching, it has to be said. Maura Lee, hi there, Maura. I think I saw you in the chat earlier. Lovely to see you. Saying Happy New Year. Looking forward to more of the Traveler's Guide and the relaunching of the Well Told Tale later this month. Yeah, I'll talk about that as well later. But the Well Told Tale, which is my second channel, my audio narration channel, I will be relaunching. I will be launching it as a podcast as well. That's happening on the 15th of January, something that I've been building towards for some time. So thank you, Maura. I really appreciate that. Some other questions I think we'll get straight into. We'll start off, I think, with the Song of Ice and Fire and the world of that, and then we'll get into a few other things maybe slightly later on. Had a question from Marvin Martin saying, what do you think is really under Planetos Corp City? I'm not sure I quite understood all the question, but I think this gives me an opportunity to talk about one of the things that we don't talk about huge amounts in terms of A Song of Ice and Fire, which is the world that we do not see, which is underneath. So we see all of the things happening above ground in Westeros in particular. But when you start doing things like when I was doing the research for the Traveler's Guide, you discover that more and more of that continent is riddled with caves and underground networks and the like. Yes, we know about things like Winterfell and the crypts underneath there, but also there are cave systems underneath the wall. There is, when you go over to Casterly Rock, all the way through the Westlands, all of that has got huge cave systems underground and dotted all the way across the continent. So what we've actually got is not just this kind of overground world that we talk about all the time, but we get this underworld, and that is partly where the dead are, but also partly where people can move undetected. The children of the forest often hide underground, as we've seen in Bloodraven's cave north of the wall, but also this is where people can travel under the wall. There are legends of this happening, and people live in there. Casterly Rock is not just a castle, it is a rock that's been dug out and people live inside the rock. So that's what it is. This is a hollow world that we're talking about here. Lots of people saying Happy New Year. Happy New Year back to you. I'm delighted it's 2020. I'm really looking forward to it. Just wondering, saying, what do you have next for Rhaegar, Robert, Lyanna, and all that? I've got 2 or 3 more episodes. I think probably 3 more videos left in that series. That's been quite a long-running one. But the next one is what's going to happen. Oh, why did Ned go to Starfall? Specifically, we've dealt largely with the Tower of Joy now, and we're left with a situation where he's there with Howland Reed and a newborn baby. Why does he go to Starfall? So we're going to deal with that and the role of the Danes in all of this, because the Danes were central. House Dane was central to what was going on there. We also had a super chat from Facio. Thank you so much, saying, if King Robert Baratheon considered Ned as family, why didn't he seek more info about Bran's attempted murder? And why was Ned bickering with the Lannisters? Well, these are connected. In terms of why Robert Baratheon didn't seek more information, or this was Ned's world. Winterfell was, if anyone was going to be able to figure out who did it, it was going to be Ned, and it was going to be the Starks. This was actually a way of honoring Ned to let him do it rather than send in his own people to go off and do it. It's the other side of the world. We think the world is, for us, is quite small. To send people all the way up to Winterfell takes months. So actually, practicalities as well as honoring the fact that he is Lord there is part of it. Why was Ned bickering with the Lannisters? He has a long history with the Lannisters, partly because he later on found out about what was going on with Cersei and Jaime, and therefore the fact that somebody who wasn't really the heir to the throne was going to inherit the throne. That was part of it. But also, and obviously then Cat told him that Tyrion was behind the murder. So there was all that. But if you go back to Robert's rebellion, you find that actually Ned immediately had problems with them there. The Lannisters stayed out of the rebellion until the last minute, and then Tywin intervened, beat Ned to King's Landing. His soldiers pillaged their way through King's Landing, which is the polite way of saying that they just murdered people, and they brutally killed children. And Jaime Lannister, Ned not always stopping to consider exactly what might have been happening, found Jaime Lannister sitting on the Iron Throne, having killed King Aerys, the Mad King, and just kind of assumed that he was there in this kind of like, well, I'm now in charge. So he had beef with the Lannisters for a long, long time. And that was why the distrust was there from the very beginning. Swole Rouge, thank you so much for the super chat, just saying Happy New Year again. Happy New Year to you. I really appreciate that. That's very kind. Let's Lauren's Corner. Hi there, Lauren. Actually just asking a Q&A. What other book series would you like to cover on the channel this year? Do you have any collaborations lined up? I will cover all of that as I try and do it during the middle of this, so we will get a good few questions going first, and then I'll try and cover what I've got coming up. But in terms of other stuff, yes, I'm looking to expand out everything that you know that I do and love. A Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings, Westworld, season 3 is going to be coming up. I'm going to be carrying on with all of them. But I'm thinking about expanding into other things, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I should be covering as well. But I'll pick up on that a little bit later. Let's get to some questions from some of my patrons. First up, Juliet O'Connor. saying, "Hi, Robert. I am particularly interested in the Targaryens and their biological family lines. In Fire and Blood, it seems strongly suggested that Rhaenys had many lovers aside from Aegon. Do you think it's possible that they had no true-born children together? And if so, because Aegon and Visenya's son had no true-born children either, is it possible that none of the Targaryen line after Aegon totally had his bloodline?" Um, yes, it's possible. So the Targaryen family tree is complicated, so I'm not going to talk my way through all of it here. But House Targaryen, as we know it, all the way through the sort of Fire and Blood era, all the way up to A Song of Ice and Fire, comes from the triumvirate of Aegon and his two sisters, Visenya and Aenys. Now, it is hinted, we never get absolute proof on this, it is hinted that perhaps that King Aenys, who was the person who inherited after Aegon, which was Rhaenys's son with Aegon, maybe he wasn't actually Aegon's son. It's possible. On the other side with Visenya, her son was Maegor. It's hinted that perhaps he was conceived using black magic of some kind. So perhaps, again, we might find that Aegon wasn't the father. We don't know. And so there's no clear-cut answer here that's saying that, yes, definitely this is the case one way or the other. We do not know. But it's hinted that this may well have been the case. If it is the case, then the family line gets traced down through Jaehaerys. So Aenys was the father of Jaehaerys, and if Aenys wasn't Aegon's son, then there's a link across to the other side of the family tree. As I said, it's complicated. And if Maegor wasn't Aegon's son, then yes, it's entirely possible that Aegon the Conqueror himself was not his own personal genetics was not passed on down through the family. Now, on one level, that's sort of academically interesting. On another level, I don't think it matters too much to our story for the simple reason that we get Aegon the Conqueror and Daenerys are echoes of one another. That's something which is very much there, regardless of whether or not they are actually blood relatives. It doesn't seem to matter huge amounts. The way that we get Tyrion is an echo of Lan the Clever, and there are hints that he might not be truly related either. And then you get huge amounts of these other now. We get Mance, an echo of Bael the Bard, and so on. So there's lots of these echoes back through history who do not necessarily have to be related to the person that they're an echo of. What is important, sort of thematically, is the fact that you get Daenerys as the echo of Aegon the Conqueror. Daenerys with her 3 dragons, in the same way that Aegon and his 2 sisters had their 3 dragons, and we will end up in the Winds of Winter with 3 possible Targaryens. Again, these things are never clear cut, but we're looking at Daenerys, we're looking at the character who claims to be Aegon the Sixth, Aegon, and we also get Jon, of course. So again, we get 3 potential Targaryens, 3 dragons. So she's the kind of the echo of this, and Drogon is the echo of Balerion, both big black dragons, massive, scary things. So that's where the literary echo is, even if the genetic code does not pass down. The Targaryen code, incidentally, does pass down either way, because it would carry on down through Rhaenys at the very least, and Visenya as well. So it would carry on down. But it's easy to get too focused in, I think, on this kind of purity of bloodline issue. Even if you accept everything as above board and everyone is the parent of who you think, or who they're supposed to be the parents of, when you get down to Daenerys, she is at most 1/8 Targaryen. It's not. She's not just this pure blood Targaryen that you might think. She is at most 1/8 Targaryen because of her great great grandparents. So that's the way that this that goes. Do not. I would suggest not getting too caught up on the exact things. What George R. Martin tends to work on other thematic and kind of literary echoes rather than specifics of genetics. Random question from 26 Art Girl, just off topic. Westworld was on Turner Classic Movies last night. How is that related to the Westworld TV series? It's not. It's the short answer. The Westworld TV series is completely new. They obviously took inspiration from it. They took the name, they took all the idea of the parks and all the rest of it. But in terms of storylines, no, it's not. It's not the same kind of universe. Okay, let's go to another question from a patron. Anna Iglesias, yes, it's the Blackwood blood that's the main thing going on with Daenerys there. Bo Barnett, hi there, Bo, saying, what was the purpose of the baby swap? This is the baby swap happening at the wall. I'll explain that in just a moment. If it is to keep Mance in line, then why not just send both babies south? Why switch them? Seems like Mance doesn't know, so what does it matter? Could they not switch them and just lied about it? Or not switch them and just lied about it? Okay, so I've mentioned in a couple of recent videos, this is a little bit complicated, or the situation up in Castle Black is a little bit complicated, and this is one of the parts of it. We have two babies at the wall. Baby number one is Sam and Gilly's baby. Now, this obviously isn't actually Sam and Gilly's baby. This is Gilly and Craster's baby, Monster. That's baby number one. Baby number two is Mance's baby. Mance Raider has a baby with Val. Now, Val the Wildling Princess, as she's called. Now, what happens is that Jon takes this baby effectively and holds the baby to ensure that Mance stays in line. Because Mance is concerned. He's also captured Val as well. Jon isn't this pure and lovely person. There are shades of grey in him in the book that are not necessarily there in the show. But he's holding captive this baby. And then he sends off, or a decision is made, but he's the person who sort of signs off on it, for Sam and Maester Aemon and Gilly to head down south to go to Old Town, much like happened on the TV show. Now, Jon then has this cunning plan of doing a baby swap between the two babies. So actually, Gilly takes with her Mance's baby rather than her own baby. Now, the reason why is because the other person up there at the wall is Melisandre, and Melisandre is keeping on talking ominously about sacrifices and blood and the power that's in a king's blood and all the rest of it. And so the kind of underlying thing here is this idea that actually Jon wants to keep a baby there because he needs to make sure that Mance stays in line. But also he's kind of wanting to protect the baby because worst comes to worst, he can prevent Melisandre from murdering this baby who is... Mance is the king beyond the wall. Val is a wildling princess. That's king's blood, right? So maybe she could burn that baby and Jon could turn around and go, no, actually, it's not that baby. This is actually Gilly's baby. So that's what's going on there. And that kind of explains why, I hope, why Jon did do the switch. Now, Gilly obviously wasn't particularly happy about it. The babies obviously wouldn't have been particularly happy about it, but that's what's going on there up at the wall. It's a complicated situation. Now, if you try and work your way forwards to um, the Winds of Winter, you have to think that Melisandre at some point is wanting to do this sacrificing of somebody with king's blood. And if she thinks it's important enough, if the baby that she was going to sacrifice isn't there, who else is there with king's blood at the wall? And this, I suspect, is where we get into the Shireen thing. We know that Shireen gets burned by Melisandre in the books. We haven't got to that point yet in the book, so we don't know exactly how, but the clear implication is that Melisandre had somebody in mind for burning, for sacrifice. That option was taken away, so the option left is Shireen, who has also got king's blood, because obviously Stannis claims to be king. Okay, just having a quick flick through the chat. Yeah, so there's a lot of complicated stuff going on at the wall. And yes, whoever it was earlier, I also miss Catherine C saying I miss Westworld. I do too. Hopefully coming back. My best guess is April. But that's we haven't got the information yet. I'm hoping for at some point in the next month or two a proper trailer for Westworld. That would be amazing. Maura Lee says, I am fascinated by each of the famous swords like Dawn, Ice, Blackfire, etc. Who do you think has Dark Sister, and who do you think will wield her? Will it be Mira Reed? Will it be Arya? What role do you see Dark Sister playing in the last two books? So Dark Sister, for those who don't know, was one of the two ancestral Targaryen Valyrian steel swords. So it's pretty important. Blackfire was the big and main one that was originally, probably not originally, but as far as our sort of bit of history is concerned, originally held by Visenya and was sort of passed down. Blackfire was the one that went to the king generally. Dark Sister goes to somebody good who can wield a sword. So that's where it was. It ended up with Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers. He had it. We had confirmation that he had it when he went up to the wall, when he was exiled to the Night's Watch. So it went up to the wall. It then disappeared. He also disappeared. So the clear implication is that he had it when he went off north of the wall ranging and ended up in what we now think of as Bloodraven's cave. So the sword Dark Sister is, as best as we can understand, in that cave where currently Bran and Mira and Hodor and all the rest of it are. Now, my best guess is that there will be something similar-ish happening in the books, in that Bran and Mira have to escape. We know that the Hodor thing won't be exactly the same, but something along those lines is going to happen. And Mira and Bran will have to escape. Now, what we saw on the show was Mira grabbing a sword on the way out. This seemed, they lingered on it for a few seconds. This is the kind of thing the showrunners used to love doing, was just hinting at something in the books, the way that they lingered on the Sword Dawn and the Tower of Joy visions that we saw it there, and stuff like that, just as a sort of a nod to the wider story, the importance of things. So Mira grabs a sword. I think Mira will grab Dark Sister and will bring it down south. So I think that there's a very good chance that she will have it. She may well wield it. Might Arya end up with it? Yeah, I think there's a good chance that she could. Dark Sister does seem to be quite, that kind of fits her. I think they're going to be left with quite practical questions there. I know that I can remember having a conversation when I had Matt J. Magician on here a few months ago, and he thinks thematically, and I don't disagree with him thematically, then you get the two halves of the sword Ice the ancestral Stark sword should be reforged and should become ice again. And my take is that practically, why would you do that in real terms? Because you're turning two Valyrian steel swords that we know were effective against the White Walkers, against the others, and turning it into one ceremonial long sword, not just a long sword, a sort of two-handed executioner sword. Why would you do that? And I think the same thing is going to happen with Dark Sister. You have to say, what purpose does Dark Sister have? Dark Sister is a Valyrian steel sword and will be able to be used to destroy the others. You give it to somebody who's going to be good at that. I think Mira is a good option to have it. I think that Arya is also a very good option to have it. Fedra the Beloved says, "Hey Robert, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. We often mention how the direwolves' names are hints as to the fates of the Stark children. What do you make of Nymeria's name specifically? Is Arya destined to become a warrior queen who will lead her people across the sea, a little bit like the ending of the show? This is far-fetched, but if magic is to leave the world at the end of the story, could it be possible that Arya would lead the last remnants of magic, creatures, men, and children out of the world to the west, in a sort of similar to Lord of the Rings way? Regardless, I'd love to know what you think Arya's ending will be." Right, so Arya's ending. I've thought for a long time that Arya's ending is to effectively walk into Nymeria and live out her life as her direwolf Nymeria. I am slowly coming to the thought that maybe the ending will be like it for her, will be a bit like it was on the show in terms of sailing off west. Now, this is at least partly thinking about Nymeria as a name. So the direwolves, for those who don't know, it's not really a theory now. It's, I think, pretty conclusive. The direwolf names give very strong hints as to the fate of their owners. So, for example, Jon has Ghost. A ghost is something which survives death. Jon will indeed survive death. Rickon has Shaggy Dog. A Shaggy Dog story is a long, detailed, complex story that ultimately hasn't got huge amounts of meaning. That seems to be what Rickon's story is, certainly on the show. That seemed to be, I mean, it was almost, his death was quite literally meaningless. It just felt like he didn't even get to say anything in those episodes, did he? So it was, that seems to be what's going on there. Bran has Summer, and this, I think, foxed a lot of us for quite some time. But summer is not spring. If Bran was playing some role in bringing about the end of the long night and the winter, then surely his direwolf would be called spring. But no, his role is actually beyond that. What happens after spring, his role is what happens in the longer term after the end of the books, which is summer. That's why he's got a direwolf called Summer. So this is getting more and more clear that the names of the direwolves are directly related. Now, Nymeria she was a queen of the Rhoynar, who were a people over in Essos, and basically they, very long story short, they fought the Valyrians and they lost. And she led her people down, out, across and west over the narrow sea, and then they landed in Dorne and settled there. So she led her people away from this threat and to freedom. Now, does that seem a bit like Arya? Well, she is becoming a warrior of some kind, so yes, there's that. But if we're to take this slightly clearer, what is her ultimate fate? To head off west across the sea. to find a new land. The reason why I'm coming to this slow conclusion is that she does not have a place. This is something that the show was, I think, right on. I don't think I showed it very well, but I think they were right on this, that at the end of this, she does not have a place. She was very clear at the very beginning, when she was a young girl, she was not going to be a lady. She was not going to inherit a castle. She was not going to sit there playing politics in Westeros. That was not for her. I think that she may well, having sort of gone down this route of death and destruction, slowly come away from it and see actually that's not her role either, to be this kind of faceless assassin. She is a Stark. She may well therefore find that she doesn't know what her role is. Where does she go? What's next for her? And heading off west on a boat does actually seem to be quite possible. So I think that it would fit more with the idea of Nymeria than just her being a bit of a warrior. Okay, let's go with Bo Barnett. Another question saying, is the wall, this is a great question, is the wall an epic fail? Of course, we don't know exactly how the others will pass the wall in the books, but an ice dragon seems like a good bet. Since this is the first time the others have attacked the wall, and they apparently get through, what was the point of it? Seemed like a fail to me. I get having a border, but an 800-foot ice wall seems to be an overkill. Okay, so this, in terms of history here, the first thing we have to say is, well, there are two things. Firstly, this is not meant to be a physical barrier. This is a magical barrier. It's very clear that the defenses that are put in place for the wall, they are in the foundations, they're magic in the foundations. Effectively, across the top of the continent, they built a magical barrier. On top of that, they did build a wall, but they did not build the wall that we now think of as the wall. They didn't build this 700-foot high wall all the way back, and it's just stayed there. Where that has come from, don't forget this wall has been there literally for thousands of years, is that generation after generation of the Night's Watch, in repairing the wall, they have been building it up. They have been laying gravel on the top to walk across, and then that's been sinking down, so they've been bringing up more. They've been getting more ice, which has been sort of staying there, and so it has been getting taller and taller and taller. It's not the exact same height all the way around. It's not just one straight line all the way across. It varies quite a lot. And this is because it has been built up over time. So it was not intended to be a physical barrier. It was intended to be a magical barrier. The fact that it stops water both ends, Eastwatch obviously by the sea, and the other end, there's the gorge, there's this huge canyon at the bottom of which is a river. So the implication was that that was a river that was at the other end of this. Seems to imply that there's come something to do with fresh water or free-flowing water that also prevents the others from passing through. So this was a magical barrier of some kind. Is it an epic fail? Well, I think you have to accept the fact that this was built before dragons were a thing. Now, dragons, they may well have been somewhere on the far east of Essos, but they certainly weren't in Westeros when the wall was built. So the concept of dragons was just not there. I mean, this is, incidentally, this is a little bit of why I'm slightly Disappointed that we didn't get the Long Night prequel, because I think we might have learned some of the answers to all of this. But they did not build the wall thinking, oh, I wonder whether this can stop dragons coming through, because dragons were not a thing. So they built it to prevent the others, the dead, from passing through of their own volition. They seem to be able to, the whites seem to be able to be taken across it, but um, they cannot sort of go across of their own volition. The magic, it's slightly murky. We haven't got like an ABC of this is the exact spell that was cast, but that seems to be what was going on. So was it an epic fail? In that it held for thousands of years? No, I don't think it was. In that it seems likely to fall to something that they had never even heard of or thought of. Well, yeah, I guess so, but that's just the way of the world, I guess, is that you never can plan for what might happen thousands of years in the future, because you've absolutely no idea. So, yeah, possibly, yes, it was an epic fail in that when the White Walkers, the others, tried to cross it on the show, certainly they could, but it's not fair to try and say, well, why didn't the Children of the Forest put in a spell against dragons? They didn't know about dragons. Okay, let's have a quick flick through. Let's see what's if anything's been getting on in the chat. Andrew K saying, not sure. Hi there, Andrew K, by the way, happy new year. Not sure we won't ever get an Age of Heroes series. It just seemed it was not being executed well. Hopefully in the future, yeah, it's possible we might get one at some point, but not for quite a few years, I don't think. I think that the HBO are now playing it very safe in their understanding what very safe is, which is as close as possible to the original formula of Game of Thrones. That's what we're going to be getting. Tyre Thornhill says, in the first book, Arya said that she wanted to be a lord of a holdfast. So it doesn't mean that she doesn't want to be involved in politics. She just doesn't want to be some lord's wife. I mean, I think that's a fair point. I think that as far as I'm concerned, my position stands that she will end up not having a place in the new world. She won't consider herself to be fully within the sort of the Stark. So Sansa will be continuing the Stark name. She's not there going to be doing political marriages on behalf of the Starks. She won't want to be going back to the Faceless Men. She will have completed in some way her desire to do her list. She won't have a role. And so that is why I see there being two possible ways that she can go, either into her direwolf and become truly Starkish to continue her reclamation of her identity, or heading off west into the unknown world. Let's have a quick flick through. Agreed Weirwood saying, is it a fail if they didn't attack the border because the wall was there? It was successful for 8,000 years, in my opinion. Yeah, that's I think that's fair. There was it was up and running for a very long time. So I mean, I don't think it was a fail, but I think that it obviously failed the first time they tried to do it. And Nicola Jurican saying, will Littlefinger have a trial in the Winds of Winter? I think that's quite an interesting point. I don't think he will in the Winds of Winter, certainly. I think that he's going to carry on right the way through, maybe at the very end of the Winds of Winter, but right the way through to A Dream of Spring. Will it be a trial? I think he will come unstuck. Whether he gets a formal trial, that the sort of the trial thing seemed very much the kind of thing that a TV show thought would make good TV. So whether it's actually a trial, I think he will end up being executed by the Starks, either Arya or possibly even Lady Stoneheart if she ventures a little further north. There would be a certain irony in it being Catelyn who kills him. But yeah, it's entirely possible that Arya does kill him. He will be found out, and Sansa will be the person who effectively um, orders his execution. So I think that's where we're going to be going with that. Ed Pistemic says, Robert, a lot of the Song of Ice and Fire theories in your videos were originally the collaborative work of the community. Which of your videos is most your own original insight, and which are you most proud of? Well, first of all, I would say, yeah, absolutely. I have never pretended that I'm doing anything other than, in the words of Isaac Newton, standing on the shoulders of giants. People have been looking at A Song of Ice and Fire for many, many years, and I don't just, as a channel, I don't just present other people's ideas. I always try and put my own spin on them. I add my own thoughts. And so what I present are always my own. I don't really like the word theories. Presentation of the most likely situation is probably where I put it. It was slightly more of a mouthful, but that's I try and unpick what is there and present what I think is the most likely situation. In terms of stuff that I've not seen around, I think actually one of the videos I've got coming out in the next few weeks is one that I've done a lot of my own work on, which is about the crypts of Winterfell. This has been something coming from one of my patrons at $30. If you become a $30 patron, then you get a bespoke gift, as it were. One of the options is to sort of talk to me, and we'll decide together a video that I do on a specific subject, and this is one of those, which will be focused in on the crypts of Winterfell, and actually is a sort of a follow-up to my Horn of Winter and the crypts of Winterfell, which again is something I'm very proud of. What exactly is going to be happening? Who's going to be rising from the dead in the crypts of Winterfell? What will happen when they do? And all those kinds of questions. That's pardon me. And the kind of questions I've been asking there, I think, are ones that not many people in the community have been asking. So I think that will be something that I'm taking my time over it because I don't want to rush it. But I'm very much looking forward to that one. So thank you for that. But yeah, I always try and give as much credit as I possibly can to other people that are out in the community. There's some amazing people who've been doing good stuff. Let's have a quick look. Okay, let's go one more question from my patrons, and then I will give a little bit of an update on what's happening on the channel over the next year, really. And this is John C. Nags saying, hello, Robert. I'm glad to finally be a supporter of Deep Geek on Patreon. Welcome, John. I really do appreciate it. Do you think Jaime being named Warden of the East is just an example of George's gardening style, not having fleshed out the Kingsguard fully yet? As my understanding is that as a member, Jaime would not have been eligible for this position. Thanks, and I can't wait for Westworld Season 3 content from you. Well, Westworld, yeah, I also can't wait. The gardening style, for those who do not know, George R. R. Martin describes himself as a gardener in terms of writing. Now, he views him, it's not just him, many other people have come out with this, is that there's a couple of different types of writers. Some writers structure everything they know from the very beginning, what story they're going to write, and then they plan it all out and then they do it. George R. R. Martin doesn't do that. He considers himself a gardener, which means he plants the seeds, and as he's going along, he sees what blooms, and he adds that into the story. So when he started the story, he had a vague idea of where it was going to go, but he didn't know exactly all the details. He was just waiting to write and allow the characters to be guiding him where he needed to go. What this means is that some of the details as he's gone along, he's kind of clarified them a little bit, and there are a few characters that have gone in slightly different directions. Now, the specific thing here is about Jamie being named Warden of the East. This is a book one thing. So the idea here is that, and it was a sort of a throwaway thing rather than anything else. John Arryn, who had been the Hand of the King, was killed, as we know, just before book one. And his heir, Sweet Robin, was still very young. And so what the question was who was actually going to rule the East, who was going to rule the Vale. And now what we hear is that Robert, on suggestion from Tywin Lannister, said Jamie is the Warden of the East. He's officially in control, and this seems to be at odds with what we find out about the King's Guard, which is that they're not allowed to hold, much like the Night's Watch, but they're not allowed to hold any ranks or titles or anything like that. So is this an example of George R.R. Martin sort of throwing something out there and then sort of slightly backtracking on it later? Possibly is the answer to that. We don't know, but it does still fit with the story. I mean, George R. R. Martin's not stupid. He doesn't just like go, oh, well, that didn't work, and then go on talk about something else. It does still fit with the story moving forward. Tywin was all the way through this, as we know. He never wanted Jamie to be a member of the King's Guard. Jamie was his heir. If Jamie was going to stay a member of the King's Guard, then Tyrion would be his heir, and he did not want that. So he wanted to extricate Jamie from being a member of the King's Guard, and so Tywin was all the way trying to slowly maneuver Jamie out from that position so that he could once more be the heir to the Lannisters and be the Lord of Casterly Rock. That was what Tywin's plan was, and Tywin did not care two hoots about what the King's Guard should or shouldn't be able to do. You shouldn't be able to just quit the King's Guard and then go back and become the heir once more to somewhere like Casterly Rock. You shouldn't be allowed to do it, but Tywin didn't care about the rules. He wanted what he wanted. So this, yes, it probably was George R. R. Martin not thinking through stuff originally, or that's probably not fair, but using his gardening style to explore issues as he's going along. But this does fit with the plot. So there's no contradiction going on here, is what I'm trying to say. It does still fit with the world that we've been told about. Okay, let's take a small moment just to talk about what's happening on the channel over this year, because, as I say, there's a lot of stuff that I'm quite excited about coming up. First of all, I mentioned it before, the Well Told Tale, which is my second channel. It's a bit of a passion project of mine. This is my audio narration channel. So if you like audio narrated books, if you like classic science fiction and fantasy, then please do check it out. We've covered some great stories: Frankenstein, War of the Worlds. We've been doing some H.P. Lovecraft, Conan, amazing stories. I've taken a short break from that, but we will be relaunching it in 2 weeks' time, 15th of January. This is going to be launched not just catching up with the stories on the Well Told Tale YouTube channel, but also we're going to be launching it as a podcast, which is something I had planned for a long time, but that's where we're going to be going with it, and it's going to be launched formally as a podcast on that date. So if you prefer getting your audio content as a podcast, that is how you can now do it. All the details will be coming up in 2 weeks' time. I might reveal some details perhaps next week, but in live stream in a couple of weeks' time, I will tell you all the details you need to know about it. It's something I'm really excited about. I've deliberately paused on that so that I can take a breath and figure out where we're going to go with it. I want this not just to be about telling great stories, but also a chance for us to discuss great stories. So yes, a lot of people have asked me, we have a chance on the YouTube channel to be discussing the stories that we've been reading on the Well Told Tale? Yes, we're going to be doing that as well. This is a big relaunch, something I'm very excited about. And if you have been a patron of the Well Told Tale, I just want to thank you, because I know the last couple of months it's been quite patchy content. And so I'm going to be sending you, if you go and have a look over the Patreon page, I'm going to be sending you a gift as a thank you from me for all of my patrons over there. So thank you very much for that. And incidentally, I'm not charging for this last month on the Well Told Tale. I didn't release any content, so I think it's only fair that I don't charge for patrons there for that month. So that's what's going on the Well Told Tale, a big relaunch. It's going to be a podcast, and I'm very excited about it. On In Deep Geek, I'm looking to all the things you're expecting. The Traveler's Guide is going to be carrying on. I'm going to be carrying on with my Lord of the Rings content. I've got a Sauron video coming up very soon. Character study of Sauron. He's not just a baddie. He has got layers. We sometimes think of him as being slightly two-dimensional, but no, he's actually got a huge amount of layers. So we're going to do a character study of that. Got some great videos, or I hope they're going to be great videos anyway, coming up on A Song of Ice and Fire. Carrying on, looking forward to the Winds of Winter, and finishing off my Robert's Rebellion series. So those are all going to be coming up. And I'm looking to expand. I sort of teased this a little bit earlier in the live stream. I'm looking to expand not just in the types of, or the different things that I cover, but also the types of content that I do. So first of all, in terms of the things that I cover, a lot of people have been asking me whether I'm going to do The Witcher. I think I will do a video. I know this was over Christmas. I got into it as much as everyone else did, and I will do an overview of the season. I'm not going to do a full coverage of the Witcher. I know most people have now watched it all, but I'm going to do a season overview and an explanation of the timeline, because that seems to be the thing people are asking me most about. And I'm also thinking about what other things I might be able to cover during the year. If there are other series, please do let me know in the comments below. If you're watching this later on, please do let me know. But I'm also, and this is something I've not fully decided on, so I would love some feedback on this one. Thinking about, should I kind of branch out a little bit more? So I'm not just doing explanations. I've always thought of this channel as being an explanatory channel, helping add a little bit extra value. I'm wondering whether you would like reviews as well. So when something comes out a day or so afterwards, doing a review of it, just to camera, of my thoughts, my reflections on a film that's come out, or a new TV show or something like that. If that's something you would like, and that means that I'll be broadening out the content, so it's not just the 3 or 4 different things that I've largely been covering so far. But if that's something you'd like, please do let me know in the comments below. If you're watching later, or in the chat here now, it's something I'm considering, so I may try it, just see how it goes. Anna Iglesias is saying, watch Dark and explain it to me, please. Yeah, I watched. I've had more time this last week or so to watch TV than I have for quite a while, and I started Dark. I have to admit, it was quite late. I watched the first 5 minutes of episode 1 and thought, no, I need to be able to concentrate on this. So I will, and I am watching Dark, and I will come back to it. So I will let you know after that. People are saying they love The Witcher. Yeah, I agree. It was good fun. A couple of people talking about Dark. Brian saying I don't like reviews. Mason Holcomb saying yes, please do reviews. Dark Crystal says Cat Lady Cats. That's not something I've watched. Brian says, and lose the glasses. I need the glasses, I'm afraid, and contacts scare me. So no, House Lawbridge says reviews will be great. Okay, I mean, I think I'll probably try on the reviews. Thank you for that. And just wondering, saying I really want you to do reviews, especially for When the Winds of Winter. I think I will cover the Winds of Winter in quite a lot of detail when that one comes out. So I don't think you need to worry about that one. Okay, so thank you. That just in terms of a forward look of where we're going with the channel. The second channel, absolutely relaunch in 2 weeks' time. Really excited by that. That's going to be a podcast. The first channel, all the things that you know that I do, I'm going to carry on doing them, and I will be expanding out a little bit more as well. But I do want to take this opportunity, as I always do, because it is so central to everything that I do. Patrons, thank you. I honestly cannot do this without you. Your support has been a huge part in carrying me through this year, and I cannot do what I do. I can't do not just expansion ideas, but like I can't do the things that I'm doing right now without your support. So thank you. I truly and honestly appreciate it. If you do want to support the channel, or if you want to get access to some stuff I do just for my patrons, and I'm thinking of some extra things that I can do for my patrons. That's another one of the things I've been thinking about over the last week or so. Please do check out. There's a link down there in the description. So you'd be very welcome to join the community. Thank you so much. Didelphi Morphia, thank you so much again, saying, do reviews or not as pleases. I love the in-depth unpicking. Please keep doing those. Yeah, I'm definitely going to carry on doing the in-depth kind of breakdowns of characters and episodes and story arcs and things like that. So I will definitely keep on doing that. Do not worry. Just wondering, saying, finally someone else who gets that contacts are scary. They are scary. Okay, so let's go with actually, why don't we go back to some questions from my patrons. Oh yeah, just in terms of timings for other things that I will definitely be covering. House of the Dragon will be a long time. We're not going to see it, so they're still just writing. They've just amassed a writing team. We've had no castings or anything like that, really. So don't expect it to start production until this summer at the earliest, probably even later. And that means that don't expect it to appear until the summer of 2021 at the earliest, and probably later. So 2022 is actually the most likely for House of the Dragon. Similarly, the Lord of the Rings show on Prime, we haven't actually heard much from them for a while. They should have started principal filming according to the contract last year. We haven't heard anything from them. We've heard a few casting announcements, but that's pretty much it. So no, don't expect to see that certainly before summer 2021, probably 2022. Let's go to Maura Lee, saying, what role do you see the Night's Watch playing in the last two books? Will there even be a need for the Night's Watch once the others get defeated and ice gets pushed back? Yes, so they will. The Night's Watch will become decreasingly important through the books. The kind of the last hurrah of the Night's Watch is now. What you'll find in the books is that John, having died, he will be brought back. He will then leave the wall as he did in the show, and he's already asked the wildlings to man the other castles on the wall. So the Night's Watch at best have got 3 of the forts, and some of the Night's Watch may well go with John, and so actually their role is going to be diminished significantly. Whether there'll be a need for them afterwards, not really, is the short answer. So yeah, they were their importance is going to be as much about their absence, which means that they're not everywhere across the wall to defend it. Bo Barnett says, if the war, this is Robert's rebellion, was started over Lyanna and was basically won at King's Landing, why didn't Ned immediately start searching for her instead of going to King's Landing? Why didn't Robert insist on it? Okay, so the war was, I mean, there was a decisive battle, which was at the Ruby Ford. That's when Rhaegar was killed. At that point, it was obvious what was going to happen in the war. Robert, however, at that point, he was injured at that battle, and he sent Ned on. They were then racing against Tywin Lannister to be the first to get to King's Landing. They didn't know which way Tywin, we didn't know which side Tywin was going to be on. They thought they had to think, well, maybe, given the fact that his son is in the Kingsguard, and that he was a childhood or young adult friend of Aerys II, maybe he was going to just fortify King's Landing. So they didn't know this. Ned was there, going with an open mind as to what to do when he got there. Then, that being defeated, it's easy to think of the siege at Storm's End as being just this kind of like afterword on the war, because that's what it looks like now, because the moment Ned got there, then the Mace Tyrell basically surrendered and just went home. But they didn't know he was going to do that. And the Tyrells and the army of the Reach were the largest army in Westeros. And the Red Wine Fleet, who were also there, once you took out the Royal Fleet, which had been diminished during the war, and once you took out the Iron Fleet, which hadn't really had huge amounts to do with the war, they stayed out of it for most of the time. They were the largest fleet. So actually, what you're faced with is the largest army left in Westeros and the largest fleet left in Westeros, besieging Robert Baratheon's ancestral home. So they had to deal with it. The war was not over until that had been dealt with. So that's why Ned went there. He went there in a bit of a hot rage because he had an argument with Robert Baratheon. But I think Ned was sort of as we know, an honourable chap, and he was doing what he had to do, which was end the war. The moment the war ended, he then went off to get Lyanna. Now, Robert Baratheon did not know where Lyanna was, or he would have sent people after her. Ned did know where Lyanna was, but we don't know at which point he found out. So it's possible that Ned only found out about where Lyanna was after what happened at Storm's End. Maybe that's when he got told by Howland, say, we're not entirely sure. But Robert Baratheon did not know where Lyanna was, therefore Robert Baratheon was not sending anyone after her. This was just once we finish the war, we'll go and try and find her thing. Let's go to a question from Noscar saying, hi, Robert, great to have you back. It's great to be back. Which actors, large and small screen, would you cast in the new House of Dragon series? Are there any characters you would like to see in the new series? Thanks and Happy New Year from our patron in Texas. Okay, so in terms of actors, I actually don't think about actors as much as I think some others do. I sort of tend to react to them when we get the announcements. In terms of characters that I'm looking forward to, the character I'm most looking forward to is Mushroom. If you've read Fire and Blood Part 1, you'll know why. Mushroom was a court jester who kept a diary, is basically what we can say, and we hear his account of what was going on, which is a lot more ribald and a lot more scurrilous than the real accounts of what was going on. And he seems to have been quite a fun character to have been around. He certainly lived through this period that we seem to be addressing during House of the Dragon. So I'm really looking forward to him. In terms of actors, the only person who's actually crossed my mind was I was disappointed John Sim, who was known to be in the Long Night Age of Heroes spin-off, which got cancelled. I think he'd be an excellent Targaryen. I really do. If you've never seen him, he was in a couple of the earlier series of the new Doctor Who, so about 10 years ago, and also in Life on Mars, which is a fantastic series if you ever get a chance to see it. But he would be brilliant as a kind of a slightly crazy Targaryen. He's got that that intensity and look about him, which I think would be fantastic. Now, let's go to Haimanti Mukherjee saying, I'd love to know the specific reasons why George R.R. Martin is one of your favorite authors. Is it his worldview, his power of words, his massive imagination, his characters, all this? I think it is all of it. George R.R. Martin has built a world. I love people who build worlds that you can believe in, and not just like a small, here's a little pocket that you can suspend your disbelief for a while. You can actively believe in this world that he has created. So I love this idea that we can not only read stories about it, but we can feel that we can inhabit it. That's a lot of what my Traveler's Guide is about, is that I'd love to just wander around this world and explore it because there's so much detail and depth across the piece. I think he's an exceptional writer as well, it has to be said. I think his command of language is often underestimated because all the different chapters are from different perspectives. And that means that he, not just the points of view are limited to what that person understands, but what they're saying and what they're thinking, he has to, and the words that he uses to describe it have to match up to that person's character and build our understanding of what that person's character is about. Small-minded people have small-minded views on the world, and we see that through their points of view. The strategic people have more strategic perspectives, and we see that through what they're thinking about. This is somebody who thinks seriously about their craft, and I actually love the fact that he takes his time because he doesn't just want to trot out the last two books. He actually wants to make sure not just the story finishes, but the narrative arcs, the themes that he's created, they also end satisfactorily. So he's a proper artist doing literary work, not just somebody who writes engaging stories, if that makes sense. Let's have a quick flick through. John Zarkala, Hynak saying John Sim is amazing. Yeah, he absolutely is. Monkeytron saying The Witcher is the best TV show now. This is obvious. When will Robert start covering? I'm going to do one, possibly two videos on The Witcher. I'll see how it goes, see if people like them. Ed Pistemic says, the thing that I think is most amazing about George R. R. Martin is that he created a series that can have so many credibly sourced theories about what's going on, but be completely at odds with each other. Yeah, so he's created a world that we can theorize about because he's given us the bits of information that allow us to feed into that, and it's not just it's obvious what's happening. That there are a number of competing theories that could be right, and probably we will never find out the truth of, like something like Tyrion's parentage. There are theories, but we probably won't ever find the truth. Lawrence Corner saying, do you think the world's climate change issues, as well as political, may alter or affect the way or route George R. R. Martin finishes the story? No, I don't. I think that he like Tolkien before him, is a big fan of making his stories applicable, or the lessons from them applicable, but does not ever wish to go into allegory. He has said, he's been asked about the climate change thing, and this, for those who've never thought about it this way, one interpretation of the threat from the others, from the White Walkers, is that this is like climate change. This is this great existential threat to humanity that people are just ignoring, and they're fighting each other, and eventually it's going to wash over them if they don't face up to it. George R. R. Martin has said this isn't a story about climate change, but he accepts and embraces the fact that people will read the story and they will be able to draw applications for real world issues. This is not a story either about the impacts of war on the disempowered in society, but we can definitely draw some truths from it in that area. So that is basically where we're at with George R. R. Martin, and it's about applicability. It's not about allegory, and I think that's a really important distinction. In fact, if you read, my version of Lord of the Rings has a forward from J.R.R. Tolkien when he talks all the way through this idea about allegory versus applicability, and George R. R. Martin has many times agreed with that. Mod Mary 1, thank you for the super chat, saying, thank you, Robert, for your wonderful channels. Happy 2020. Thank you, Mod Mary. And thank you for all you do in terms of support as a mod. And indeed, while I'm thinking about it, thank you all of my mods. You do fantastic work. I truly appreciate it. I do have the best mods. They don't just do stuff on this channel, they do it on many other channels as well. But thank you. I really do appreciate it. Jamie Watson saying, in Deep Geek, when HBO come to their senses and do Robert's Rebellion, where would you start? Tywin being made Hand of the King, the Warding of Ned, or the Tourney of Harrenhal? They won't. I'm sorry to say they're not going to do that. George R. R. Martin's been very clear that none of the prequels that he's signing off on are with any of the characters that we know now. So sorry about that. If I were to do it, I would start with the Tourney at Harrenhal. That's where I think everything starts. So you can trace things back further, but I think that's where I would start. Maura Lee says, in previous videos you mentioned that Arya, once Arya concludes her term with the Faceless Men, she will go to kill more folks on her list. Being that Queen Cersei is one of the names on her list, do you see her going through with killing her? Do you feel it will be Jaime to do the deed in the end? Yeah, I've done a couple of videos on this one. I think she will focus in on trying to finish her list. I think that means that she will target Cersei. My instinct at the moment is still that Jaime is going to be the one to do it. There are, at the very least, they will die together. There are so many hints that, you know, they both said we came into the world together, we will leave this world together. So at the very least, they will die together. And I think Jaime's arc, at the moment, arcs are not linear. So we have to remember this, that he can, as on the show, he could get a certain amount of the way down the redemption arc and then break from it. That's entirely possible and legitimate. But as it stands, his arc does seem to be heading towards this idea that he has to have some kind of showdown with Cersei. He can't just leave her because there was too much baggage, is probably too small a word for it, but their fates are too tied together for him not to have this final meeting with Cersei. Let's go with one other question from Maura Lee. I think we're in terms of questions from my patrons, I've got a few more which are moving out from A Song of Ice and Fire. So I'll try and cover off the Song of Ice and Fire questions here, and then we'll move on to other things. Maura Lee asks, how do you see the Davos story arc playing out in the final two books? Will it be similar or different from the show? Davos, so in the books, Davos is in a slightly different place to in the show. on the show, he was there when John was killed, and so he was the person who was leading the sort of the rescue mission, as it were. In the books, he was at White Harbor, and goes on from there, we assume, on to Skagos to try and find Rickon, the idea being that he will then take Rickon across to Winterfell. He's hundreds of miles from the action in Winterfell. Now, Rickon is almost certainly going to have this Shaggy Dog story for himself. He will not survive, but the idea is that Rickon is at that time, as far as the loyalist houses in the north go, he is the best bet for a Stark king, the Stark Lord of Winterfell, which is what they're looking for, because Bran has gone missing, Robb is dead, Sansa has gone missing, Arya, well, she has gone missing, but there's a pretend Arya in the mix as well. Jon is obviously illegitimate at the moment, at least. So Rickon is the last outstanding candidate to be the Stark in Winterfell. So he's been sent off to try and get him. In terms of sort of where he goes from that, I think this probably means that he will arrive after Winterfell, after all the events that we saw him involved in. But his fundamental character is being one of the good guys. He is very pragmatic, and he will see, as he did on the show, he will see what the greater threat is to humanity. So I think that we will see him staying up in the north and probably, I mean, he may well, as on the show, be sort of like a right-hand person to Jon. If Jon heads down south, as he probably will, then he will need somebody who understands southern politics, and Davos is probably as good a bet as anyone to helping out with that. So yeah, I think that that's roughly where he's going to go. Okay, let's go to some questions from patrons about Lord of the Rings. So Lord of the Rings, Liam Mullen and Leaf Underhill both asked the same question, actually, over on Patreon, saying, "Hi, Robert, will you be doing a traveler's guide to Middle-earth when your Lord of the Rings gets into full swing?" Thank you. I am looking into it. So my plan with the traveler's guide, as I say, I think I've got 9 or 10 more to do in Essos. We are doing Marine now. I'll do a couple in Marine. We need to move down through Yunkai and Astapor. There's a lot of interesting places like Karth, the Dothraki Sea, obviously down over into Ashai. I'd like to cover off 5 forts and places like that. But I think we've probably got 9 or 10. That'll take me through the first maybe 3 months of this year. After that, probably I'll be focusing on Westworld. If the timing goes as I'm thinking it will, I'll be focusing on Westworld for a while, and then I'm going to reassess where we're going with it. In terms of Lord of the Rings, well, actually, I'll take a quick step back. There are a few other places I've noticed, having looked back, that I kind of sort of missed out, that I could have done one on and I didn't, like the Fist of the First Men. I missed out. There are a couple of places like the Sunset Isles. There's the Red Waste I may not do a full episode on. So I think what I will try and do for my patrons is to do a few extra bonus episodes or half episodes for my patrons over the period after that. So if you like the Traveler's Guide and you're a patron, that will be where you'll get the extra bonus ones. In terms of Middle-earth, I'm looking into it. I love the idea of doing one of Middle-earth. Oh, somebody said also The Witcher as well. I love the idea of doing it in The Witcher. I think the issue that I'm vaguely aware of there is that I know that the Tolkien estate are very strong on copyright on these things, so I just need to investigate that bit first, because I don't want things to be taken down or all the rest of it. But I love the idea of doing one. I just need to look into the practicalities. Didelphi Morphia, thank you so much, saying Traveler's Guide to Middle-earth. Yeah, I'd love to do it. I love Middle Earth. I think it's a fantastic place. Um, Christian Isidoro saying, Robert, I hope you and everyone watching had a wonderful holiday. Just a quick question. Are there any dedicated Middle Earth live streams on the agenda in the near future? Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I've not got them scheduled, but I have done one already. I did one with Helen, the clueless fangirl, who has set up her own Middle Earth Lord of the Rings YouTube page. I highly recommend you check that out, by the way. If one of the moderators, if you're watching live, one of the moderators could put a link in the chat, that would be very much appreciated. She knows huge amounts about Lord of the Rings, so I would highly recommend that. Yes, I will be doing some more Lord of the Rings live streams. I'm not sure yet when, but I will definitely be doing some more. I'm hoping to there are a lot of good Lord of the Rings YouTube channels. I'm hoping to have made contact with a few of the people who do them. I'm hoping to try and get them on board as well to come on the live stream. So we'll see where we go, but that's definitely something that I'm looking to be doing this year as well. LMC, thank you so much for the super chat saying happy 2020. Looking forward to a new year's worth of content. Thank you, and happy 2020 back to you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. O'Hara Young says, Robert, if I ever see you in real life, I'm going to scream and act like you're an A-list celebrity. I don't know what to do with that, but thank you. That's very kind. I can assure you I happily go about my life without people screaming, which is very nice. Being able to go to the supermarket and not be famous is a lovely thing. Casey of House Lawbridge, but you're welcome to scream if you wish. Casey of House Lawbridge, will you be reviewing Dracula? Hi, Casey, by the way, first of all. Dracula, for those who don't know, this is a new drama on BBC One in the UK. I think it's going to be, in a few days' time, it's going to be on Netflix. Somebody please correct me if that's not right, but I think it's going to be on Netflix in a few days' time. This is a 3-part adaptation by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, who are the people behind Sherlock from a few years ago, if you remember that, which was excellent. I've not seen it yet. I'm a big fan of Dracula, the book, and what I've heard is that it is good, the TV show. So I will happily talk about it next week. I may do a review. We'll see. Let's see what I think about it first. But from everything I've heard, it's really quite good. Not just faithful to the spirit of the story is what I've heard, but also some interesting new slants on it, in the same way they did with Sherlock. Carl Karsnark saying there's a great viral clip of a super cool Dracula billboard that you can see online. Yeah, I tweeted that out if you're at all interested in that. A fantastic advert for it. I would highly recommend it. So yeah, in the UK, the 3 episodes are coming out. One came out yesterday, another one was tonight, and the final part tomorrow. I think the idea is that they are all going to come out. If it is Netflix, I think it's Netflix, that they're all going to come out released at the same time at some point in a few days. And yes, Men of the West channel is indeed awesome for Lord of the Rings content. There's quite a few good channels out there, but I would definitely recommend that. Finally, I'm down to my final question from my patrons. So if you've got any other questions, then now is the time to drop them into the chat. And oh yeah, I've got somebody, who was that? So Bernie L saying, OMG, Dracula is great so far. Good to hear it. Very much looking forward to it when I get there. Now, Netflix tonight at 2 a.m. apparently. So there you go. Get a good chance to watch it. Okay, so last question from my patrons, and then I'm going to dip into any other questions we've got in the chat. Leaf Underhill says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Saying, thank you for all the great content. You mentioned once that Doctor Who has always been a part of your life, but you were never going to include it on your channel. I'm curious as to why. Is there a YouTube channel you would recommend? And where would you recommend Stephen Stark start with Doctor Who? Because he's never seen any Doctor Who. He's inclined to starting with the most recent one. Personally, I would pick a different starting point for him. Okay, so Doctor Who, yeah, I did actually. If you delve back into the weeds of Deep Geek, you will find about two of the very first videos I did were Doctor Who videos, and they didn't do very well. In all honesty, I don't. Maybe there wasn't as much of a demand for Doctor Who videos. Maybe I didn't quite get the feel right of them. I don't know, but it didn't really work for me. And I think it's important for me as a channel to cover the things that really work and chime for me. It was quite early days. I suspect that there are a few videos that I would look back on and I was not quite as proud of. But Doctor Who as a whole, yes, you're right. I have mentioned it before. Doctor Who is one of two things in my life in terms of sort of nerd or geek culture that I cannot remember my life before them. They've always been a part of my life. Doctor Who and Lord of the Rings. Doctor Who has always been on the TV in my household when I was growing up. I used to read, there were some old paperback books of Doctor Who that I used to read religiously again and again. There's some audio books while Doctor Who was away for many years, and then when it came back, absolutely loving it. It's a part of my DNA. Yes, I'm not saying I'm never going to cover it. I may well cover it again at some point. I could certainly imagine if I do go into this kind of review thing, then I may well, pardon me, I may well cover it in that way. But in terms of sort of doing episode by episode explanations and commentary, I'm not sure I would do that. In terms of where Stephen Stark or anyone would want to start with it, I think the most obvious place to start is when Who started up, which is with season 1 of Christopher Eccleston. I'm a huge Christopher Eccleston fan as the Doctor. He's my favourite Doctor. I think he absolutely nailed it. But there are other places that you could start. I think when Matt Smith started, was when Stephen Moffat took over. That is a sort of a restart there as well. There was a new showrunner and a slightly different style of how to do it. I would say that with Doctor Who, that there are overarching story arcs often within seasons, and there is one very high level story arc that carries over the first few seasons, but I don't think it's particularly important. What I would suggest to anyone who's not tried Doctor Who before, just show them an episode you think is good. Something like Blink from many years ago was a fantastic episode. I think there are some excellent episodes from the first season. The Doctor Dances, The Empty Child, I thought was a fantastic doubleheader. And there are some excellent other ones from Matt Smith's time as well. I would pull out. So yeah, just pick a good episode. But if you want to start properly, go back to Christopher Eccleston. I would say the classic Doctor Who, just for the hardcore fans. I love it, but I think you need to love the characters before you go back to the really kind of shonky old things from the 60s and 70s. Okay, let's have a quick flick through. I'm going to call this to an end in the next few minutes, but I'm going to dive into the chat now. Kate Bertinsky says that everyone says Blink. That's the first and only one I watched, and it scared the bejesus out of me. They're not all scary, but that was a very good episode. It has to be said. Do you think Sansa? A Crisp says, do you think Sansa prevented the Starks from leaving King's Landing via Cersei will come back to haunt her? much in the same way as the letter did in season 7. I think the letter was. I think they were just trying to play up the tensions between Sansa and Arya on the show in season 7. I don't think that's going to happen hugely in the books. There might be a little bit of a subplot there about somebody finds that letter, but I don't think it's going to be huge. Let's have a quick flick through. Let's see. Alicia Kinston saying, "Don't blink, don't even blink. They are faster than you can imagine. Don't turn your back, don't close your eyes, and don't blink. Good luck." Yeah, absolutely fantastic stuff, that one. Watch the Lady Leaf Underhill says, "Watch the Husbands of River Song Christmas episode." Sonny McLeod saying, "The Empty Child." This is a lot of people, a lot of Doctor Who love going on in here. Mason Holcomb saying, "Feelings on Torchwood." I enjoyed Torchwood, watched every single one of them. I don't think it was all great and high art, but I did it. It was enjoyable, and that's really what I go for. Sarah Kay saying, "Loving The Last Kingdom." Yeah, I would recommend that. It's for those who don't know The Last Kingdom. It's sort of like a sequel to the Vikings, really. If you watch Vikings, I say sort of. It's got a different feel to it. It's a lot more based in England rather than and taking sort of the perspective of the English who are being invaded rather than the Viking invaders. But it's really well done. It's based on a series of novels by Ben Cornwall. George R. R. Martin is a big fan of them. And I would recommend it. Yeah, if you get a chance to do go and check it out. Chrissy of Oldstones, hi Chrissy, saying Vincent and the Doctor. Oh yeah, that was a fantastic Doctor Who episode. If you just want to pick one, go for that one. I would very much recommend. That was a beautiful. Vincent, this is Vincent Van Gogh, and it's when Doctor Who gets it right, it gets it very, very right. That episode, incidentally, was written by Richard Curtis, who we know from things like Love Actually and Four Weddings, but he absolutely nailed the not just the beauty of what Vincent Van Gogh was painting, but also somebody going through severe mental illness, and it could have been mishandled, but he did it beautifully. So I would highly recommend that. So Maud Mary saying, "For all the new fantasy, cerebral, sci-fi type series coming out, if they drop the whole series at once, will you cover the whole season and go episode by episode?" I think this is a very good question. So yeah, I think most of the stuff I do, like Westworld, is done on a week-by-week basis. So I will carry on doing that on a week-by-week basis. In terms of stuff, if it gets dropped all at once, my temptation is just to do a few overview videos of that, because I think that mostly people binge things. I might be wrong on this, but I think that I certainly know that with, say, The Witcher, then when it came out, I then just binged a few episodes at once, and I wasn't particularly looking for explanations for specific episodes so much as what was happening across the piece. And so that's probably where my instinct would be. But yeah, tell me if you disagree with that one. Monkeytron saying, "Stop messing about, read The Last Wish and do Witcher stuff when you're obsessed like everyone else." Yeah, I've read The Last Wish. I've read the first 3 books, actually. So I am up there, and I will be doing some Witcher material. So yeah, I needed to have a break over Christmas, which probably didn't work very well in terms of doing videos on The Witcher. But yeah, I will definitely come back for. I will be doing some Witcher stuff. As I say, probably 1 or 2. Okay, I think I am going to call this one a day. People encouraging me to watch The Expanse. I will give it another go, guys, at some point, I promise you. No, Ross, where would you suggest someone who's very attuned to fantasy sci-fi start watching Doctor Who? I would personally say just start with episode 1 of the reboot back in the day, Christopher Eccleston series. I would very much recommend you do that. Okay, guys, I'm going to call that a day there. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed just getting back to. I've just spotted another super chat. Actually, let's cover that one. So, Jesper P, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Saying, please do Traveler's Guide to Middle Earth. Thank you. As I say, I'm looking into it. I'm also, are you aware of Men of the West and the Dork Lords? They're amazing Lord of the Rings channels. Happy New Year. Yeah, I know Men of the West. I would highly recommend it. The other, I've not come across that, but I will have a look for it. Yeah, there's a few. I mean, off the top of my head, if you're looking for Lord of the Rings channel, Men of the West, well established, got a lot of fantastic videos. Highly recommend you go and check that out. The Philosopher's Game, I've recommended on here before. Again, somebody who knows a huge amount about it. And someone I'm sure you know and love as I do. Then Helen, the Clueless Fangirl, has just set up her channel, which is the Clueless Fangirl, and she honestly knows a lot about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. So please do go and check that out as well. She's been churning a few videos out over the last few weeks, so please do check that one out. But Dork Lords, now I will go and have a look for that. Okay, guys, I think that is all for me for today. I will be back next week with another one. Have I missed? No, I thought I'd missed a super chat, but I don't think I have. I will be back next week. I'm starting to try and line up some guests for the super chats over the next few weeks. For the super chats, I'm sorry, I was just seeing another super chat appearing for the live streams over the next few weeks. So what I'm aiming to do is roughly every 2 to 3 weeks I'll be doing these kind of solo live streams. I really enjoy doing them. I get to go through a whole load more questions this way. But I'm trying to expand out the amount of guests that I have here, so I have a few different views, particularly when we're just going to start covering a few extra topics. That's something that's coming up. Thank you so much for the excellent chat. I really enjoyed this. A great way to start the new year. Look out for more videos coming out. I've got my Traveler's Guide coming out tomorrow, and then there's going to be a Witcher overview and timeline explained coming up as well. Okay, guys, so if you're watching this back a bit later, then somewhere up around here will be appearing a link to other live streams I've been doing over the last couple of years now. And somewhere up around here is a link to Patreon if you want to support this channel, if you want to priority questions for live streams, or get access to some content I do just for my patrons. Please do go and check that out. Thank you so much, guys. I've really enjoyed this. Take care, and I will see you again next week.